He's a best-selling novelist and has been called an American Chechov. He's also won the Peabody, is a screenwriter, and his works have been nominated for Academy Awards. Tom Perrotta's new book is called Tracy Flick Can't Win. It returns to the character played in 1999 by Reese Witherspoon in the novel-turned-film Election to find out how she and the times have changed. And Tom Perrotta joins us now from Belmont, Massachusetts. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, well, thanks so much for having me.
I really enjoyed this book. You have now written 10 novels and 5 screenplays. What's it like to create characters and plot lines and to actually get to see them played out on a larger screen?
You know, it can be a real thrill. I mean, I've been so lucky to have actors of the caliber of, Reese Witherspoon, who made Tracy Flick into an immortal character. Carrie Coon played Nora Durst in The Leftovers, Kate Winslet in Little Children, Catherine Hahn with Mrs. Fletcher. Just to see these actors kind of bring, an imaginary character of mine to life on screen has been, just an unvarnished thrill. It's not even a drawback, but once they do it, it's hard for me to remember what those characters were like in my own mind.
Well,
they become that character.
I was about to ask you that too, because I was wondering, does it turn out the way you wanted to, or vastly different from what was going on in your head when you were writing those books?
Well, there are often differences, but for the most part, those are kind of exciting. You have to be open whenever you collaborate to let your collaborator bring what they can bring. And it's often something that you wouldn't have expected. And I think to be open to that and to, let that happen and not be defensive or protective of your characters can be really useful.
I can only imagine the amount of collaboration that goes on behind the scenes. Election was a 2-hour film, and The Leftovers, that ended up being a 28-episode. What was that experience like for you?
That was one of the great experiences of my life, actually. I wrote this novel and I brought it to HBO, and I knew that I didn't know enough about TV to run the show myself at that point. And we brought in the showrunner, Damon Lindelof, who had made Lost. And to me, Damon is possibly the greatest TV writer around, and somebody who approaches storytelling from a very different standpoint than I do. He's kind of a science fiction, comic book person, and I'm a psychological realist. And I think often he just surprised me. He just wanted to bring a level of boldness and magic into the show that initially made me uncomfortable. But as we went on and I saw the possibilities that he was creating space for, I was just really excited about that. And by the end of the 3-season run, I was extremely happy with what we did together. And I felt like it was something I could have never done on my own.
You just called yourself a psychological realist. How would you define that?
I start with characters and I try to get inside of those characters and let their thoughts and desires dictate the progress of the story. The Leftovers started with a very high concept, a kind of a speculative concept, which was there's a kind of a rapture-like event. But instead of really digging into all the details of this event where millions of people disappear, I set the story 3 years later and just tried to deal with like the psychological fallout for my characters. My literary heroes are, writers like John Cheever and Philip Roth and Willa Cather. And I'm really writing. Chekhov is a hero of mine as well. So I'm just writing, about ordinary people and their struggles and their dilemmas and their desires, rather than approaching storytelling from a more plot-driven perspective.
Speaking of Chekhov, you said he's a hero of yours. It must be really cool to be called the American Chekhov.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's a thrill, and I want to apologize. Chekhov is. Uh, I appreciate what the critic was saying, which is I'm working in this tradition. Chekhov is an incomparable writer, so it's a little humbling to be put side by side with someone like that.
With this book, what made you want to revive the character of Tracy Flick?
Tracy has stayed alive, particularly in the US, as a kind of touchstone character, someone who embodies a kind of unapologetic female ambition. And for a long time after the movie was made, in 1999, she was seen as a kind of villain, or at least an unpleasant archetype, which I wasn't really that happy about. And I was really happy to see in about the past 10 years a kind of revision of Tracy, people realizing, that she was treated unfairly, that she was an ambitious woman, and that ambitious women are held to very different standards than ambitious men. And so she was in my head because she was part of a cultural conversation. And then I started to write a book about a football hero who comes back to his hometown to be honored, but he has had a brain injury, as many professional football players have. And it was sort of about a reckoning that he has with his past. And as I wrote the book, I kept kind of wanting to write it in the style of Election, which has this oral history kind of set up with a bunch of different people passing the baton and telling the story in fragments. And I thought, why am I writing this like it's Election? And I suddenly sensed, oh, is Tracy in this school? I feel like Tracy wants to be part of this story because, throughout Election and then in Tracy Flick Can't Win, her nemesis is always the sort of football hero, the golden boy who gets unfair advantages while she has to work and scrape for every little thing.
Well, you mentioned Vito. We're going to come back to him in just a minute, but I want to remind people of Election. We have a short clip to show. Sheldon, please roll.
And I also think that certain young and naive people need to thank their lucky stars and be very, very grateful that the entire school didn't find out about certain indiscretions that could have ruined their reputations and their chances to win certain elections.
And I think certain older people, like you and your colleague, shouldn't be leching after their students, especially when some of them can't even get their own wives pregnant. And they certainly shouldn't be making slanderous accusations, especially when certain young, naive people's mothers are paralegal secretaries at the city's biggest law firm and have won many successful lawsuits. And if you want to keep questioning me like this, I won't continue without my attorney present.
Reese is amazing. This was the late 1990s when the novel and the film came out, and when we first met Tracy Flick. Hopefully I'm not overstating the obvious, but was this inspired by Hillary Clinton?
It's very much a Clinton era work. I started writing Election in the early 90s, right after the 1992 election when Bill Clinton became president. And I was extremely interested in what was then called the character question, this idea that people's private lives were the key to how they would act as politicians. So if you lied to your wife, you would lie to the public, was the sort of shorthand for something like this. And, it was a big change in the way that politicians were treated in America. Like John F. Kennedy had a crazy private life, but it was hidden from public view by journalists conspired to keep it hidden. And then with Clinton, of course, his private life was his undoing. But I think Tracy also was, in some sense, definitely embodied a certain kind of feminism of that moment, this moment when suddenly, girls who'd been raised with feminist moms were feeling like they could do anything and perhaps become president themselves. And, Hillary loomed over that, right? She was a different kind of first lady, and she was trying to get involved in policy. And of course, she eventually came as close as you could possibly come to becoming our first woman president. And so Tracy is a kind of a character inspired by the Clinton era, which I would argue lasted, a good, you could argue that it's still going on, that Trump was a reaction to the Clintons. And I think Tracy continues to be relevant because she is on a kind of parallel course as someone like Hillary Clinton.
Well, speaking of being president, in the book, this is what you write, what Tracy's feeling. Being president was my ambition, not my dream. There's a difference. And it wasn't a crazy ambition. Whatever it is that a person needs to reach a goal like that, I had it in me. I knew I did. Even back in high school, especially then, I was smart, I was tough, I had an incredible capacity for hard work, and I believed in myself. No imposter syndrome for me. And beyond that was my actual superpower, which was that I wanted it more than anyone else. Trust me, you didn't want to get in my way. You mentioned female ambition earlier. Has the way we view female ambition changed?
I think it has in many ways, right? When I started writing election in the early 90s, there were very few women politicians in America. And now there are quite a few. And, I think within the next 10 years, we may see our first woman president. But on the other hand, you saw with Hillary, there were just people who said, I don't like her. It wasn't just that they didn't like her. It was, I think they felt very threatened by her. There was some level of unexamined hostility in them. But I do think that women are held to different standards, that their ambition is still a little threatening to people who grew up in a world where men seem to have some natural right to be at the top of the hierarchy.
And I would also argue, too, that I think women themselves, because when you said that earlier on about how people responded to election, I think there was a lot of young women, myself included, who might have were a little bit uncomfortable with that. Obviously, as you get older, you look back and you say, the conditioning that you're in, the world that you're in, is telling you different things, which is really great to see you revisit Tracy, because at the end of election, we see Tracy some years later working as a congressional aide in Washington. But Tracy didn't end up becoming president, far from it. Now in this book, she's in her mid-40s. What's happened to Tracy Flick since we last saw her?
Yeah, it was funny. For a long time, I would have discussions with people like, what would Tracy be doing? And some people would go, she's going to be, running for president as a Republican, or she would be one of these talking heads on Fox News, kind of a Laura Ingraham type. And, I actually had this sense that every high school, there's a Tracy Flick, and not every Tracy goes on to some fame and fortune and great success. And, Tracy lives a precarious life. She is raised by a single mom. They don't have a lot of money. Their relationship is very exclusive. Just the two of them against the world. And when Tracy's in law school in the new book, her mom gets sick, and she decides to come home and care for her. Like a lot of women, she feels like this is something that she has to do, and she wants to do it. She doesn't begrudge her mother, but because of this misfortune that is both a medical misfortune, but also an economic misfortune, she's sort of thrown off of her trajectory toward the top and has to kind of cobble together a life, first as a substitute teacher, and then she goes to grad school and gets a PhD in education administration, and she's an assistant principal at a high school. So by any means, a highly educated, successful person, but the stakes are, in her mind, very small compared to the arena that she wanted to play in, which was Washington, D.C. and electoral politics. And so she feels like a lot of us, a lot of people in middle age, like a little bit diminished, and that there's this somewhat embarrassing or demoralizing gap between what she hoped for and what she has.
It's also very interesting to see the relationship she has with her daughter, because now she's also a mother. I want to read something else that you write in the book. You write, "You can't keep reading these stories one after the other, all these high-achieving young women exploited by teachers and mentors and bosses, and keep clinging to the idea that your own case was unique. In fact, it had become pretty clear to me that that was how it worked. You got tricked into feeling more exceptional than you actually were, like the normal rules no longer applied." And of course, this is Tracy, which brings me to #MeToo. How did Tracy's views on her high school affair with a teacher change over the years?
Yeah, so this was a big reason for me wanting to revisit Tracy Flick. When I wrote that story in the early '90s, Tracy's backstory, she had an affair with an affair. She says that's the wrong word, but that's the word I use. She had a sexual relationship with one of her teachers, and at age 15, and something that now I think we'd all look at and just say that's a terrible thing. But she, in the book, said, felt that it was a choice that she made. It was something she wanted to do. Eventually, or actually pretty quickly, she realized that she didn't want a sexual relationship with this teacher, and she stopped it, and the teacher was caught and fired. And it's a big part of the backstory of the movie Election. And Tracy's defiant in that book and movie. She's, I'm not a victim. I did what I wanted. He was a big baby. She has a lot of different ways of articulating this. But when Me Too happened, I started to see a lot of stories of women looking back and saying, I had this relationship with an older man. It felt consensual at the time. But looking back now, I realized that I was maybe taken advantage of. And I was very curious to see, how Tracy would look back on that experience as a high school administrator, as a mother, and as someone living in a time that has a very different language for discussing, sex that takes place within an unequal power relationship, like a teacher-student.
You also empowered Tracy Flick. She is the architect of her own decisions. The decision, as you mentioned earlier, to look after her mother, to become a single mother, her career and relationship choices. Did you want us to like her this time around?
I think that I never want that to be the goal with characters. My goal is always to understand them and let them speak for themselves. And I like Tracy even in Election, though I was startled by how many people saw her as a kind of a villain. Part of it, I think, is in the movie she's played with maybe very funny hard edges by Reese Witherspoon. In the movie is a little bit harder edged and more satirical in tone than the book. But yes, I do think there's something poignant about Tracy in Tracy Flick Can't Win. When we're young, we're full of potential and we measure ourselves against our potential. And when we're middle-aged, we have to measure ourselves by what we are in this moment. And I think Tracy is struggling the way a lot of middle-aged people do with how to define success. Do I define success by the good I'm doing in the world now, or do I define it by a teenage dream that I haven't been able to realize?
One of the characters, Vito, is also dealing with this. You wrote this novel and Mrs. Fletcher with female protagonists, but in these and other novels, you explore male behavior through football culture, pornography, gender violence, bullying. What have you figured out about this side of masculinity?
Well, I think it's easy to get frustrated with the pace of change, but I do think a huge amount has changed in gender relationships and in our sense of you know, who deserves power and you know, all those things. And I think there just has been, along with, you know, the kind of gradual empowerment of women, I think a real re-examination of what's wrong with masculinity. And it's something I've been interested in my entire writing life. You know, I grew up in a very traditional working class culture, and then went to college at Yale, and you know, really had to re-examine a lot of the values and behaviors that I was raised with, and it's been interesting to see. You know, I think my own kids just grew up in a whole different world in terms of how they think about these things. But I you know, hierarchies are, you know, to find yourself at the top of a hierarchy just because of an accident of birth is often morally damaging to people. You know, they think you know, you look at someone like Trump, who's on the top of every hierarchy you can imagine, and he honestly thinks he can get away with anything, and the world often seems to agree with him. And you know, there's someone like Tracy who feels herself, you know, always on the bottom, or at least, you know, fighting against the tide. And you know, she has to fight for every little scrap that she ever gets, you know, and there is a kind of inherent injustice in that I think, you know, is I think society is fighting against it. Some of us are fighting against it, and I think that's a great thing. But it is, you know, it's exhausting for someone like Tracy.
Well, speaking of Tracy, I'm not sure if this has been sold for the big screen, but will we see Reese Witherspoon reviving that role as Tracy Flick?
I sure hope so. There's some conversations going on about that. Nothing has been finalized yet, but it would be so exciting to see her return to this character in middle age. I think it would just be, I would be so excited to see what she would make of, you know, Tracy, who's an assistant principal in high school, you know, still struggling to kind of make baby steps toward the top.
With a clock ticking as well. Tom, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you. As I shared with you before we started taping, we didn't want to give away too much of the book, but at the very end, I was in tears, Thank you so much for spending some time with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Nam. I really appreciated the conversation.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.